Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Tristan Rallings, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Private Anne Collishaw. Today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the Greek campaign during the Second World War. At the beginning of 1941, Greece was Britain's only ally still fighting in Europe. While the Greek army had repulsed an earlier Italian invasion, when the German invasion of Greece began on the 6th of April, British, Australian and New Zealand troops were vastly outnumbered and were swiftly overwhelmed. Lieutenant General Sir Thomas Blamey, who had renamed his command the Anzac Corps in order to recognise its large component of New Zealanders, eventually commanded a fighting withdrawal, with the 19th Brigade defended its position long enough for the Allied invasion to begin on the 24th of April. Over 50,000 troops were evacuated from beaches across southern Greece, leaving isolated groups of soldiers cut off from the retreat. Most would become prisoners of war. Today we remember the Greek campaign. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private George King Sutherland. George Sutherland was born at Riddell's Creek between Bendigo and Melbourne in Victoria on the 24th of March 1906, the son of George and Anna Sutherland. Little is known of his early life. By the advent of the Second World War, he was living with his wife Vera in the Melbourne suburb of Middle Park and working as a clerk. George Sutherland enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 25th of October 1939 at the Melbourne Showgrounds. After being transferred to Puckapunyal, he was posted to the newly formed 2nd 5th Battalion. Having completed basic training, Sutherland and his battalion embarked at Melbourne for overseas service on the 14th of April 1940. Arriving in Kantara, a city on the western side of the Suez Canal in Egypt, the battalion continued training in Palestine and Egypt. Private Sutherland suffered from sandfly fever in July, but was back with his unit in August. The men took part in their first campaign in January and February 1941, advancing against the Italians in eastern Libya, where they took part in successful attacks at Badia and Tobruk. In early April, the battalion deployed to Greece with the rest of the 6th Division in order to resist the anticipated German invasion. The Greek campaign lasted approximately a month, during which the Allies lost men as well as essential arms and equipment. With limited air cover, the Allies were chased out of Greece under fierce and sustained German bombardment. Caught in the middle of these events were the Australians. On the 12th of April, Lieutenant General Thomas Blamey, commander of the Australian Imperial Force in the Mediterranean, issued an order announcing the formation of the new Anzac Corps. Australian and New Zealand troops were fighting side by side against an invading German army that had been triumphed everywhere. With the very existence of this force in the balance, Blamey invoked the spirit of Gallipoli to inspire his troops. The deeds of the Anzacs in Greece did not prove to be an inspiration to the Australian war mythology in the same way as the defeat on Gallipoli in the First World War. The bulk of the Anzac Corps was evacuated by the end of April, though many got only as far as Crete. After occupying defensive positions at Calabar on the 14th of April, the battalion became involved in one long withdrawal to the southern Greek port of Kalamata, from which it was evacuated about 2 weeks later. The battalion lost 21 men killed, 26 wounded, and 47 taken prisoner of war. Among those killed was Private George Sutherland, who was 39 years old. He was killed in action on the 19th of April 1941, 10 days after arriving in Greece. Today, his remains lie in Fallon War Cemetery in Greece, underneath the epitaph chosen by his grieving family, "Duty nobly done." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private George King Sutherland, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.